Hello, this is Michael from the Resurrected Hobbyist, again bringing you the next in a series on my efforts to revamp and redesign the Space Marine Storm Talon from Games Workshop. In the last video I talked about what I felt were the failings of the model based on what I was expecting from it and what I felt the basis for its design was. I then explained how I'm going to go about changing and redesigning the model to better suit my vision of it. Now then, let's get started. In the introduction video, I explained that I wanted to install an LED lighting array in the model to provide some illumination to it. After looking at the assembly instructions of the model, my thoughts are to go at it by working in sections. The belly, the cockpit, and then finally the engines. I simply don't see any way to accomplish all three parts in one go. So in this video, I'll be talking about lighting up the belly thrusters. So this video is going to be broken down into two segments. The first segment will be about my theory and plan of how I'm going to go about installing the LEDs, the resistors, and the wires. While the second segment is going to explain how the plan turned out in reality, because as we all know, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. By looking at the instructions, we can see that the bottom of the Storm Talon is largely comprised of 5 components: 4 thruster nozzles and the base plate to which the thruster nozzles are attached. The big trick with putting the lights in the thrusters will be getting the thruster to line up with its base and still allow the LED to shine through properly. Once the LED is actually mounted in the thruster cone, it will simply be a matter of attaching the resistor and wires to the other side of the belly plate. I'm going to run the majority of the wiring back along the body into the extended tail so that I'll be able to build in a switch to turn on and off the lights. Due to the size of the model, I'm only able to install a single on-off switch for the entire model. I simply don't have the space to put in 3 or 4 controls to turn on things individually. The only other major part I really have to be careful about with the underbelly is the fact that I am not going to use the Games Workshop flight stand. There are a couple reasons behind this decision. The first one is I truly dislike that stand. I feel that they took a very simple, straightforward concept with the smaller flight stands they already had, and made it about 6 times as complicated as they really needed to be. The extruded cross design isn't offering any added stability, and in my experience, it doesn't sit deep enough into the model to properly hold it. The second reason I'm not using the Games Workshop flight stand is because I need to be able to pass wires up the base into the model. In order to do that with a solid piece, like the flight stand, I need to drill out holes to pass the wires through. Because of the type of plastic used in these stands, this is extremely difficult to do. The plastic has a tendency to crack if you drill too fast, or melt and gum up the drill bit if you go too slow. So my choices are: 1. Spend upwards of 2 hours drilling out the 2 holes into the 6-inch Games Workshop flight base that frankly doesn't work very well anyway. Or, option 2, spend about $5 to buy an 18-inch length of clear PVC piping. Yeah, I'm going for the clear PVC piping. With that part in place, I'm going to modify the Talon to use the PVC piping instead of the flight stand, which means changing the way the model works with the flight stand. Cross-shaped hole with a circle-shaped peg doesn't work very well for anyone who didn't master that game back in kindergarten. To make the Storm Talon model accept the PVC piping, I will mount a section of styrene tubing on the underbelly of the model with a diameter small enough to slide into the clear PVC tube. And here we have the base plate with the thrusters and the LEDs installed in them. Installing the LEDs was actually easier than I had first thought it would be. All I really had to do was attach the thruster cone to the base plate and then drill through the center of the base plates. Games Workshop was even nice enough to provide a centering hole in the thruster cones. In order to avoid warping, cracking, or deforming the individual pieces, I had to start with my smallest drill bit, then move to a medium size, and then finally to the larger 3mm drill bit that I would use to mount the LEDs themselves. Once the holes were drilled, it was pretty easy to mount the individual LEDs and secure them with a dab of hot glue on the base. I used a red marker to indicate the anode, or the positive lead, on the LEDs to make it easier to install the circuits later on. And that's the big catch with working with LEDs. They have to be installed in the circuit in a particular way in order for them to work. I won't go into details about that point, because there are many tutorials online about how to work with LEDs, and if you're interested in the topic, I would advise you to check them out. Once I had the LEDs put in and secured with a dab of hot glue, I had to lay down a layer of aluminum foil under the leads on top of the plastic piece to protect it from any hot solder, because I needed to attach the resistors that are covered by this tape and the additional lead line. And I wanted to avoid the trouble of having hot solder falling on the model piece. Leads to some unwanted situations. Once I had that all done, I removed the tin foil and then used colored electrician's tape to isolate the anodes and the negative leads on each pair of LEDs, giving me 4 lines out that will later be combined into 2 leads in the back of the model itself. The last big thing I had to do was mount a section of styrene tubing here to allow the model to be used on the new mount I'm going to build for it. In order to accomplish this, I had to first bore out the cross-shaped hole and then put in a segment of 2-inch plastic plating here, and then pass the PVC tubing through that plate. Secured it with a combination of plastic glue and super glue, giving it a very strong bond that without dedicated effort I do not believe will come loose at all. Now here's the part that I really have to call praise out to: the base. I have been trying to figure out how to build the base for weeks. Here's the problem with the base. It needs to be large enough to house a 9-volt battery. It needed to be heavy enough so that it would not be outweighed by the model itself, and it needed to be rigid enough to keep the stand upright. I had originally tried building a base with styrene for support, and then filling in the detail using shaped foam. Didn't work so well, as cutting out the base to accommodate the battery wound up causing the base to collapse under itself. Then I tried casting something in resin. The material would work, but my sculpting skills weren't up to the challenge. So that is when I contacted Jeff, the owner of Dragon Forge Studios. I've said it before, and I have no shame in saying it again, but I do feel that Dragon Forge Studios makes some of the best bases in the business. I use his bases frequently, and I've never once been disappointed in the quality of them. So I contacted Jeff and asked if he was interested in a commission to create this type of base that I needed. We exchanged several messages back and forth, my providing him details about what I was looking for, what it needed to do, and the general size of the base. He in turn asking for clarification, asking if certain approaches would work, and so on. What ultimately came up with was this. It is a polyurethane resin base with a section bored out for the battery and a hole spaced out for the flight stand. The only modification I had to make was this plate added to the bottom of it, which just cut in the right shape with a series of magnets attached to it. What that does is it allows me to have a battery in the base and then secure it. As you can see, the magnets hold the battery in place very well. And then as I finish up with the model, I'm just going to pass wires up through this tube into the model itself, which, as you can see, I've already modified to sit on the base. And there you have it, the conclusion of part 2 of my video log. Next time I'll be talking about lighting up the cockpit. Stay tuned for updates.